regardless of whether or not the universe is friendly, if you believe the universe was friendly, your experience of life would be immeasurably enhanced. And what if the universe actually was friendly? Then, my friend, every day would be a blast.
I'd like to welcome to the show Dr. Srikumar Rao. How are you doing, Dr. Srikumar?
I'm doing very well. Thank you, Alex.
Thank you so much for coming on the show. I am so excited to talk to you. I've been a fan of yours for a while. I've read your books. I've taken some of your courses on Mindvalley is how I got introduced to you by Vision. Your work is pretty remarkable. And I think that the conversation we're going to have today is going to delve into some deep waters that you generally don't talk about too much, which is great. And I'm really excited about. But first and foremost, how did you start down the path on the journey that you're on with your work? Because it's a very niche space that you carved out for yourself.
Yes, indeed, it is a niche space. And I wish I could say that this is something that I planned and cultivated and executed with great care, but that's not the way it worked. Let me give you some background. Mm-hmm. My mother was a very, very, very spiritual lady and with a very deep interest in spirituality. And from a very young age, persons of enormous spiritual influence have been a part of my life. Take Mahesh Yogi, for example, who founded Transcendental Meditation. He used to hang out at my place and spent many nights there. This was before he was discovered by the Beatles and Mia Farrow and became a worldwide celebrity. He'd just come off the mountains and nobody had heard of him. But my mother recognized who he was, as I said, and cultivated him. And many of the monks of the Ramakrishna mission, who were the disciples or the direct disciples of Ramakrishna, were everyday figures in my life. Of course, at that time, I just knew them as kindly old gentlemen, kind of like surrogate uncles or grandfathers. But something had to rub off. So many years ago, decades ago, not years ago, I read A Search in Secret India, which is Paul Brunton's introduction of Ramana Maharshi. And I was very, very, very deeply drawn to him, to Ramana Maharshi and his teachings. But all of that was just something that was a byline, if you will, and I was busy making a career. I did my MBA, went into the corporate life, and so on. But I continued all that reading, mystical biography, spiritual autobiography, because I was just drawn to them. Then what happened is, for a time, my career stagnated, and I was stuck in a university where I had a stellar corporate career. When I was in the corporate America, my career took off like a rocket, but I got burnt out by politics, which is why I came to universities. Then I found out that politics is alive and well in universities, plus the money isn't that good. I said, gee, I blew it. I had such a stellar career, great education, and I ruined it all. My life is ruined. Now, all my life, I'd been doing a lot of reading, spiritual biography, mystical autobiography, as I explained. They take me to a wonderful place, and I came back to the real world, and it sucked. But somehow I knew that and it also occurred to me that if all of the stuff I was reading was only useful if I sat quietly meditating and thinking peaceful thoughts, but it wasn't useful when I came to the hurly-burly, then it was useless. Mm-hmm. Somehow I knew that wasn't true. I knew it was very valuable, perhaps even the only thing that was valuable. I just hadn't figured out how to make use of it. So one day I came up with my bright idea, which is, why don't I take the teachings of the world's great masters, strip them of religious, cultural, and other connotations, and adapt them so that they're acceptable to intelligent people in a post-industrial society. And the thought of doing that made me come alive. I was a marketing guy, so normally whenever I got an idea, my immediate question was, would others be interested? Is there a market for it? And if I thought there was, I'd develop it. If I thought there wasn't, I'd drop it. This was the first time I did not ask the question. I was going to create the course because I needed it for me. My initial thoughts were, I teach MBAs. We all know what motivates MBAs. Nobody's going to enroll. And that was fine. If they did, wonderful. If they didn't, God bless them. I was going to create that course because I needed it for me. So I did. It did well. I moved it to Columbia Business School in 1999, and it exploded. It was the only course at Columbia which was a university-wide draw. I had students from law school, business school, School of International Public Affairs, journalism, Teachers College, all over the place. And then it spread by word of mouth. Students from London Business School came to Columbia on exchange, and I went back and said, this is a great course, you got to have it. So it traveled. I taught it at Columbia, taught it at London Business School, taught it at Kellogg, taught it at Haas, Berkeley, taught it at Imperial College, and now I teach it privately in New York, London, and San Francisco. Since the pandemic, it's virtual, and it's going so well that I don't know if I'll go back to doing live courses again. Well, I'll make up my mind in a year or so. So that's the background. And I state in the syllabus for my course, by the way, that this course will profoundly change your life. And if it doesn't, we've both failed. And the reason I can state that so boldly is because of where I draw my material from. These are the teachings of the world's greatest masters. And it's been tested over millennia. So how can it not change your life if you really implement what I share with you? Now, the material that I talk about is my quote-unquote material. I've taken the teachings, I've expressed it in different language that's more acceptable to the milieus in which I function, major business schools, major corporations, with entrepreneurs, and they relate to it intensely. But the power comes from that, from where I draw the material.
That's pretty remarkable. I mean, it's a fairly genius idea to be able to basically translate the great teachings of the masters of the world and strip them of all of these kind of biases that people have, like, oh, it's a yogi, or oh, it's this, or it's Jesus Christ, and you start adding, because all those names come with baggage. So you strip the baggage, and you're like, let's just look at the core of what they're teaching.
Exactly. And it's further, because what happens is it's not really acceptable to talk about religion or spirituality in the milieux in which I function, particularly top business schools and major corporations. But people who are attracted to what I do are smart cookies, and they quickly figure out that, what it's all about. But more important, I never ask them to believe anything. I never ask them to take me on trust. What I simply say is, hey, look, whatever you're doing is not working for you. So why don't you take what I say and try it out in your life and see if it works for you? And they find, OMG, it does work. It works in spades. And that's how they go from skeptic to believer to quite a few become evangelists.
Now, your wealth of knowledge in the spiritual space and all the studies you've done, because to be able to translate, you really got to be a student of these teachers. It's not just reading the book once; you're reading it again and again, and now you've been teaching it for decades at this point. So, out of all of the experience and all of the knowledge that you've been able to accumulate over the course of your career, what is your definition of consciousness?
That is pretty simple, Alex. I'm not going to define consciousness, but I'm going to explain what it is. Mm-hmm. Consciousness is your being rooted in the knowledge that you are not who you think you are. You're not Alex, who was in films and has now got a spiritual podcast. That's just a drama. That's a soap opera. That's a drama you've created and you're starring in. Who you really are is pure awareness, masquerading as Alex. Let's say you go to bed at night and you dream you're Julius Caesar, and you're chasing Pompey, and your legions are fighting his legions, and you cross over into Egypt and get involved with their affairs. You have an affair with Cleopatra. You help her against her brother. All of that is a dream, and you recognize that when you wake up. Equally, your being Alex is a dream, and you recognize that when you wake up. Your job is to wake up, and when you recognize it was all a dream, it is all a dream, there is only one of me. There's only one. There's not even of me, because there is no me. Getting to the point where that is your being. I can't even call it experience, because there is no entity to experience anything. That's why words start breaking down. But this residing and being pure awareness, that's what consciousness is.
So is that what the great masters, when they find enlightenment,
Absolutely.
quote
That
unquote,
is the
awaken?
kingdom of heaven. That is nirvana. That is sakshatkara. That is awakening.
And that's what we all strive for, is that awakening. Because when Yogananda or Buddha or Jesus, Christ consciousness, all of that, while they were still in the play, they figured out that they're not an actor on the stage. I always use the term movies. Like, so many of us, you could play bad guys or good guys, but at the end of the day, the actor goes home and lives out their own life. We as well.
Exactly what I say. My thing is, when you look at whatever is happening, if you identify with the actor, you're gold. If you identify with the character, you're screwed.
And that's so, see that, I want to just dig into that for a second, because that's so profound, because so many people live in the character.
Yep.
They believe that they're the character.
That's the vast majority of everybody around who is being a character, but the vast majority of everybody around and everybody around is your creation. It's your dream.
Yeah, without question. But you really need to focus on the actor, which is another word for the soul, the higher consciousness, the awareness, the awake.
Exactly right. Yes.
What we're looking for. Because I always find it interesting that even most people I run into, and obviously, I believe that whoever runs in your path is there to teach you in one way, shape, or form, and it's part of our drama. I get that. But when I meet people or speak to people, I always find that even if they don't admit it, there is a searching. They're looking for something. And sometimes it's grounded in ego, but there's always a little something. I mean, look, how many billions of people go to church every Sunday? How many people go to the mosques? They're searching for connection. It feels like that we have been disconnected from our source while we're here playing these parts, and we're constantly searching. It is those masters that were able to find that source again and go, oh, I understand I am not the character, I am the actor. And they're able to go in and out of source through meditation and other aspects. Is that correct?
No, they're always in there. They don't go in and out. Like, take Ramana Maharshi. As I already said, I've been heavily influenced by him. Ramana Maharshi wasn't the body. We think that he was the body. He grew to be 70, he had cancer in his left arm, and he died of the cancer. But no, he's a presence. The body is like a suit of clothes. It gets worn, you discard it. He had no identification with the body. We had the identification of his body, and we said, he is there, he died. He didn't die. He was never born to begin with. He was pure awareness.
So you were saying something interesting a little bit ago when you said that words start to break down.
They break down entirely, yes.
Because there's no explanation. And the only experience I have with that is when I meditate. So when I'm in deep meditation, I come out, and the only word that even remotely comes to the feeling I get out of a deep meditation is bliss. And it still doesn't actually explain it exactly, but it's the only word I can come up with that is pure bliss when you go into deep meditations. And I've been meditating for years now, and I can do an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours sometimes. And when I come out of those deep meditations, there's this thing. And my family, my young daughters will walk up to me and they're like, "Oh, Daddy, you were just meditating." And I didn't tell them, but they can sense something's different with Daddy.
There is a term for that. It's a Sanskrit term called ananda, which is unalloyed bliss. It's a very deep feeling of well-being. It is not happiness as we define it conventionally. Right. It goes beyond that. It's a very, very, very deep feeling of well-being. That, Alex, is your real nature.
Right. And it's only a small, like if it was from 1 to 100, it's like 0.0001 of what I think eventually what we feel when we connect to source, when we really truly are awakened.
That is the complete source of the Buddha, the Jesus, Ramana Maharshi. They were there. That is the kingdom of heaven.
Right.
And it's
Exactly.
always open to you. All you got to do is get there.
Exactly. And from what I understand, from my journeys during this, it's work. It doesn't just come. Even I always find it interesting that Jesus showed up at 31 or 32. There's 30 years that's unexplained about. I'm assuming he was doing some stuff. He didn't just come in enlightened. Buddha had to go do some stuff. Yogananda had to go do some stuff. Rahashi had to go do some stuff. They didn't just come because if they just born enlightened, what's the point? Almost like, what's the point?
This is where the words totally break down, Alex.
Right.
What's the point? Here's the point. Even asking the question, what's the point, roots you in duality. Because something has to happen and it doesn't happen. Otherwise, what's the point? What's the point of existence? What's the purpose? There is no purpose. The purpose of existence is to be. That's it, just be. But in our heads, we've got, there is me, there is Alex, and I got to do something. I got to get my podcast more famous. I got to get better people to listen to it. I got to get more people to listen to it. All of that is part of the drama that you are creating. There is no purpose. The purpose is just to be. That's it. And there is nobody else for you to influence or do anything with. So there's no question of point. There is no point. The very fact that you ask what's the point of that means you're rooted in duality because there's something you have to accomplish. There's nothing you have to accomplish.
So explain duality to people that are listening.
Duality is where you think there is you and something else. And if there is you and something else, there will always be conflict.
Okay, so then when you're not in
duality, there is no conflict.
Interesting.
Recognizing that you are one and one without a second. That's why in India you don't say one, you always say one without a second. Ram Dass put it beautifully. There is nowhere to go, there is nothing to do, there is no one to do it anyway.
See, now we're getting into very deep waters here, which
absolutely. I kind of suspected we might be going there. That's why I said I want to have a recording of that.
This is wonderful because we're going into some very deep waters here, which I absolutely love playing in these waters because it just starts to make you. These are the kind of conversations that start making you think and start making you, change direction and start thinking about things at a much, much deeper level. This is kind of like a home cooked meal as opposed to a fast food pickup. Now, okay, so I think if I'm correct, in some of your works, in some of your talks, you've talked about the flow state or going along with the universe as far as having the universe almost conspire with you. And so many of us don't. We have that ego that wants to control constantly every aspect of our lives, control other people, control our money, control our careers, control our bodies, control everything. And what I found out through my experience so far in this world is that the moment that you allow the universe to kind of guide you and go with the flow that are the opportunities and things that are presented to you. Yes, you have to work. Don't want to get me wrong. You got to kind of you have goals. You want to be a filmmaker. You want to be a writer. You want to be a professor, whatever. But if you're going in the wrong direction, the universe does push you. It does nudge you. And sometimes we're so stubborn that it has to hit you over the head with like a hammer.
With a baseball bat for you to recognize it.
And believe me, I've been hit with the baseball bat way too many times. I think I'm just exhausted. So now I'm just like, okay, you know what? I'm just going to stop walking up the river. I'm going to stop getting out of the boat and try to push the river because I can't push the river. The river's already going. Mm-hmm. And the moment that I allowed myself to let things flow and let things happen a bit more. And I'm not saying I'm not a participant. I am. I always tell people I cut wood and carry water. Mm-hmm. I cut wood and carry water. But where I go with that wood and water, I let the universe kind of go. And this show is a perfect example of that, where once I said, you know what, I'm all in, I'm going to let go and let's see what happens. And I'm not even kidding you. The moment that was declared to the universe, the doors swung open and things started happening with the show and with my world that I couldn't even dream of. Like I would have, after listening to you, reading your books, watching you on Mind Valley and all these things, if you would have told me, oh, you're going to have a deep conversation about spirituality with Dr. Rao, I'd be like, you're out of your mind. But yet here you are. And it's just so interesting. How do you do that? What's your experience with kind of letting it go? Because I'm assuming, just like everybody else, you didn't come out fully formed. And there were moments that you were holding on tight and trying to control the wheel. I had
more than my share of baseball bats. And to be very honest, I still do, because I recognize this is the way to go, but I'm not there yet. That's actually, in some ways, the greatest frustration of all, when you know what needs to be done, but you can't do it because you're not there.
It's brutal. It's even worse than not knowing.
Exactly correct, which is what the vast majority of people are. No, but increasingly what happens is I've discovered that you're not alone. You and the universe are inextricably tied together. You're dancing the tango. And when you lead differently, the universe has no choice but to follow differently.
Interesting.
So I recognize the fact that the universe and I are in a dance, and I lead, and sometimes the universe leads strongly, and sometimes I lead strongly. But whatever comes is what the universe wants to have happen. And between you and the universe, always bet on the universe. So whatever happens, you go with that. You try, you say, this is what I want, but if you accept it, and by the way, we're all control freaks, as you know, we always want things to happen our way. So as long as you've got a vision of this is the way things are going to do, you try your level best to make that happen. But you try your level best to make that happen, knowing that what you have is the illusion of control. You don't have control.
Which is very interesting, because if going back to, I don't know, when you were 5 and had a crush on a little girl and like, I want to marry her. If at that moment the universe said, okay, this is the one you're going to marry, imagine where your life goes. If you actually got what you wanted in life or you planned on in life, I feel that it'd be a disaster. And you only can look back through time. As you get older, you look back, I'm like, my God, I've dodged a bullet there. Oh my God, I wish that didn't. I'm so glad that didn't happen.
That particular bullet, Alex, because I did fall in love with a person right after I came to America, and I was really infatuated with her.
Right.
But somehow I knew she wasn't right for me. But despite the fact I knew she wasn't right for me, I was still infatuated.
Yep.
But it didn't work out. And I'm so grateful to a wonderful universe which came in with a baseball bat at that time.
Not now, Rao. My God, if just with the girlfriends alone, how many baseball bats I've been hit with.
Yeah.
And when I finally met my wife, there was no baseball bats. Mm-hmm. It just flowed. It was so easy. She moved in 3 months and we were married 3 years later. We had a family and everything just kind of flowed because that was the path that I needed to go on. But it's so interesting. Now, you said something that we don't have any control, which then creates the conversation about free will. And my take on that is that there is a blueprint. There is a direction that you are put here on earth to go do. I won't be a basketball player. I won't be a wide receiver for the Miami Dolphins, even though I wanted to be when I was a kid. I don't have the skills or the talents to do that.
Or the physique. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, or the physique, exactly. The physical physique, the talents, the anything, or the placement or any of that kind of stuff in life. But when you start finding out what those talents are, that's what kind of guides you in the direction you go. You are like, tomorrow I could stop doing everything. I'm like, I'm going to go be an astronaut. Yeah. I'm going to go back to school. I'm going to study and I want to be an astronaut. Obviously, that's a very difficult path. And if it's not true to who I am, it's probably not going to happen. But because the universe is going to be throwing bats left and right at you. So how do you have the balance between free will, in your opinion, free will versus a predetermined path that you are kind of born to do?
Okay. A couple of things here. First of all, I really believe that you or anybody listening to this can get anything he wants or she wants. Anybody can get anything he wants or she wants. Only you're not going to get it at level 1. And let me explain what I mean by that. You want to be wide receiver for the Miami Dolphins. On level 1, you become wide receiver for the Miami Dolphins. And Alex, that's not going to happen. But on level 2, you go to, why do you want to be wide receiver for Miami Dolphins? Right. Do you want the fame? Do you want the acclamation?
Money.
Do you want the money? What does it represent to you? And the third level is, why do you want that? And it is at that third level that everyone can get what he wants or she wants. But you have to do the patient digging, and it requires a fair amount of intelligent discrimination to go down that path. Obviously, you can go down as many levels as you want, but in my experience, 3 or 4 is more than adequate for the vast majority of us and for the vast majority of situations you're in. And it is at that level that you can get anything you want.
That is fairly profound. That is fairly profound, because I never thought of it in that way, because you're absolutely right. If you start to ask the questions, I had another guest on there the other day. He's like, the answer is always within the kind of question you are asking.
Exactly.
And it's so
I want to be a billionaire. I want to be the richest man. Well, many entrepreneurs are stuck in that, as you know.
Oh, they just want money, more. It's almost a sickness. Like, I want to build more. I got to go faster. I got to bigger. I got to, have an exit strategy. Look, I watch Shark Tank every week as well.
But
I love it.
You want to get down to that road. Ultimately, Alex, what it boils down to it is you don't really want to be world famous. You don't really want $1 billion in the bank. You just want to have the internal mind state that you think you will have when that happens.
Right. And you know what's really interesting, because I've had the pleasure of speaking to extremely high performing people in the film industry, Oscar winners and $1 billion directors and writers and producers. And I've had deep conversations with them about, when you win the Oscar, that's the event, that's the goal. What then? And how they really had to come to grips with, like, I've been struggling all my life. I've been chasing this thing. I get it. Now what? Now what do I do with the rest of my life? And there is a profoundness in that. And I don't know about you, and I'm not saying all rich people are unhappy, but if people who are successful, I've met a lot of successful people, and few are happy. And it's not, I'm not saying all, I'm saying few that I've met are extremely happy and fulfilled, because they have this kind of need to want more and more and more. And people ask me all the time, like, well, don't you want money? I'm like, money, what is the definition of money for you? Do you need a roof over your head, a comfortable place, food on the table, some money in the bank in case the entire world goes to crap, which it has multiple times in the last few years, money to send your children to school? Like, at what point, how much do you need to be happy, to be content, to be secure? After you reach that point, everything else, in my opinion, should be of trying to build something to be of service to the rest of the world. Because I'm
going to push back on that. You don't even need that.
Okay. Oh, yeah. Okay, I agree. I see where you're going. Understand what you're saying.
You do not even know. It's the story you're telling yourself, I need this. We have the story, I need security, and security means that I have enough money in the bank to look after my needs for a year. If I have an injury, I can, go to the hospital and have my bills taken care of. I can educate my children, etc., etc. It's a story you've told yourself. Look at the sages and the saints. Ramana Maharshi, the only thing he had was the lion cloth and a water pot. And people flew from all over the world to be in his presence because he was completely self-sufficient. Whereas we're not. We're tremendously grasping individuals who always want something and something more.
So could there be a master who is wealthy and builds organizations and builds companies that help the world.
Absolutely. Whether or not what somebody has, quote unquote, does not determine whether he's a master. I had a hedge fund manager who was a guest speaker in my class, a very unusual hedge fund manager. But this was when I was teaching at Kellogg. And a bunch of students and I were hanging out with him after the class was over. And as always with MBA audiences, my question turned to money and how they wanted to make it. And I said, why the hell are you all concerned about that? I got to tell you that I have several Forbes 400 clients. Mm-hmm. And let me tell you, they are, exact quote, sick, miserable fucks, end of quote. They just happen to be sick, miserable fucks who have a lot of money.
I will quote you on that.
They just happen to be sick, miserable fucks who have a lot of money.
Mm-hmm. Because at the end of the day, money, I mean, if I had $1 billion, I'm like, great, fantastic. I can do a lot of good in the world. It wouldn't change who I am. How many cars do you need? How many houses do you need? How big of a house?
There is a trap, Alex, I'll tell you, because this notion that I am going to help a lot of people is an ego-driven thought.
Is it?
The notion, I'm going to have a lot of money, I'm going to help a lot of people, I'm going to do that. That is a prison.
Okay.
What happens is you're not helping anyone. Help is happening. You just happen to be the instrument through which it is. Be enormously grateful that you are the instrument. But the notion that I am helping, that there is an I which is helping.
Oh, no, I understand.
Disastrous.
I agree with you 110%. No, I completely agree with you that I would definitely be the instrument of the universe, as Mother Teresa was the instrument of the universe for what she did. And, and she went around the world looking for money to help people and things like that. I absolutely agree with you. I would be an instrument. That I personally can do anything is ridiculous as a concept.
And even the notion, I want to get a lot of money so I can help get rid of it. For whatever reason, you have this desire to have a lot of money, by all means, go try to make a lot of money.
Sure.
You may succeed, you may not succeed. If you do succeed, fantastic. If you don't succeed, fantastic. You'll get that itch out of your system. But if you do get a lot of money, then you now have a lot of money and you're the trustee. 20 years from now, 40 years from now, you're going to be dead and whatever you accumulated is going to be stripped from you.
I always say the same thing. There's no U-Hauls behind the hearse.
Exactly.
It's just
a good one. I'm going to copy it right away.
Yes, there's no U-Haul. I've never seen a U-Haul on a hearse. It doesn't exist because you can accumulate. I mean, you could be Jeff Bezos, you could be Elon Musk, you could be whoever, or Steve Jobs, or whoever the richest person in the world is at this moment in time. And when you're done,
you're done.
You're done. You leave the same way you came in, alone. You came alone and you leave alone. And that's the thing. So it's all about what you do while you're here and because if you're right, if you are given this kind of wealth or this kind of influence or this kind of whatever superpower, quote unquote, that you get, whether it be being a teacher, being a host of a podcast, being an athlete, whatever that power is, it's a responsibility to okay, what am I going to do with this? Am I going to do this for my own ego, or I'm going to be of service? And you speak of something very interesting about the power of being of service to others and to help others and how that makes you feel happier. And that has been clinically proven that there is an endorphin that gets released. I forgot what they call it, but it's almost like a happiness endorphin. And I've seen the studies, and it's so true because I feel so much better giving $100 than getting $100 personally. Can you dive into that a little bit?
Absolutely. Look, let me give you an example. Can I tell you a story?
Absolutely.
Okay. In my course, I have an exercise called the other-centered universe. And that bears on the fact that all of us live in a me-centered universe. We think the earth revolves around us. So no matter what happens, we very quickly bring it down to what's the impact on me. Your partner gets a great job offer and you think, how is this going to affect our relationship? Your daughter drops out of high school to begin an in-depth exploration of controlled substances and you think, Gee, is rehab covered by insurance? No matter what happens, you very quickly bring it down to what's the impact on me. So what I point out is that if you live in a me-centered universe, and most of us do, but if that's where you predominantly spend your time, then you are going to live by and large a mediocre existence, punctuated with flashes of pleasure, but essentially meaningless. That's just the way it is. It comes with the territory. So if you want to get out to the point, the vision I laid out where you're radiantly alive, you have to find a cause which is bigger than you are, a cause which brings a greater good to a greater community, and you have tremendous flexibility in defining both the greater good and the greater community. But unless you find something like that, to which you can subsume, if not your whole life, at least a big chunk of it, you're going to live a mediocre existence. So you have to be other-centered. And the exercise I have in my class is, I ask people to think of a time when somebody did something that made them feel so good that the glow carried over. You know, maybe you were waiting in a line for something and the guy next to you was happy and jovial and cracking jokes and, you know, and he made everybody laugh so the time flew by. Or you visited a department store and the clerk told you, oh, this suit really looks good on you. And you sense that he wasn't just trying to make a sale, he was sincere. Can you remember such a time when somebody made you day? Everybody can recall at least some instances where that happened. So my exercise is very simple. You're going to go out tomorrow and deliberately you are going to make somebody's day. So there was a senior music industry executive who was actually commuting from Brussels to London Business School to take my course. And if you're commuting from Brussels to London, what you generally do is you take the Eurostar. Mm-hmm. So he took the Eurostar, which gets off at St. Pancras. And as he got out, he said, gee, I was supposed to have been working on the other-centered universe exercise, and I haven't done a damn thing. And there were a bunch of students who were in a huddle there, and he overheard their conversations, and they were on visitors to London, and they wanted to go somewhere, they knew where because they heard the conversation, and they didn't know if they had enough money. So everybody turned out their pockets, and they were counting and not sure whether they had enough money to buy the tickets. And on a sudden impulse, he went up to the counter and bought tickets for all of them. He knew how many they were. He counted and bought tickets for all of them. And he said, look, those kids are going to come and they're going to ask for tickets to that. And why don't you give it to them and tell them it's paid for? And if it turns out that they're going to leave without coming, call them and tell them that, they're the tickets and they've been paid for. And then he just went to the exit sign and waited. And the kids counted, and finally they decided they had enough, and one of them went to buy the tickets, and the clerk gave them all the tickets, and he saw his face light up, and he was all excited. They called the others and said, hey, get in. They were all excited, and they couldn't thank anyone because there was no one, but he just said. And then he came back and relayed to my class, and he related that, and he said, Professor Rao, I haven't felt this good in years. So that's what the other-centered universe is about. And as you can imagine, since I teach at top business schools, and MBAs are sharp cookies, very soon somebody picks up and says, Professor Rao, let me get this straight. We have to be other-centered because we feel good. Yeah. But then it's really all about us, isn't it? That's a wonderful thing. And the short answer to that is yes, in the beginning. It's like you have training wheels on a bicycle. But once you learn to ride a bicycle, you take the training wheels off. So initially, you are other-centered because it genuinely gives you an endorphin high when you help someone. But if you continue down that path, eventually you help people, not because it makes you feel better, but because that is the outward manifestation of the kind of person you have become. And then you're no longer thinking, I feel good. You help out of feeling good, not you help to feel good. That happens.
That's a fantastic story. The other day, we're teaching our daughters to try to give as well and to be of service and all of that. And we were in the drive-through of Starbucks. And I needed a coffee because they just beat the hell out of me because they're 10. And I needed something, a little pick me up. And when we got there, my wife said, "Hey, why don't we pay for the car behind us?" Because the car behind us was a young man in a little beat up car, but he was waving to my daughters, just saying hi, being kind, because my daughters were waving at him and he waved back. It's like, wouldn't it be nice? Let's just pay for his thing. So we got to the thing. And we're like, "Hey, how much is the guy's coffee behind us?" And we're like, "Oh, it's this much." I'm like, "I'll put it on my tab and just let him know, thank you for being kind." And we drove away. Never saw the reaction. My daughters were dying to see the reaction, but I drove away fast enough so they couldn't see it. I didn't want them to be, like I want them to just do it out of the goodness of their heart.
Exactly.
And not just because I want to get attention.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a real learning moment for them. And now they it's a concept that they have kind of been hardwired with now. We're like, how can I be kind to someone? How can I be helpful? And when they see something that's not kind or not helpful, they recognize it and call it out, which is really fascinating to me. That, because when they're so young, they can be programmed in so many. It's a lot easier. The programming is a lot easier at 10 than it is at 40. But I agree with you 100%. And I felt good about it. But I've been used to doing that. I do that all the time. I help people as much as I can, whenever I can.
Random acts of kindness. Do it, then just do it because it makes the world a better place, and you want to live in a better place.
No question. Now we've discussed a lot about finding your path in life and finding what you're supposed to do. Do you have any advice on how to discover what your mission or what your purpose is in this life? The thing that makes you happy and helps people as well?
I get questions all the time, Alex. Professor Rao, I really love what you do. I want to be passionate about what I do like you are. How can I find my purpose? Wrong question.
Okay.
Purpose is not like a seashell on the beach. You're walking along and you find it and say, "Hey, I found my purpose."
Agreed, 100%. Agreed, 100%.
Passion does not exist in the job or what you do. Passion exists inside you. And if you don't figure out a way by which you can ignite it right where you are, you're not going to find it outside. So your job is not to find purpose. Your job is not to find the passion. Your job is to ignite the passion that is already inside you, and you do it right where you are. Purpose finds you. You don't find purpose. And the way to do that, Alex, is to recognize that the only thing you ever do in life is you work on yourself. Now, this is really deep, so you bear with me.
Mm-hmm.
You are given a bunch of tools by a benevolent universe. Your wife, if you're married, is a tool. Your children are tools. Your career is a tool. Your podcast on the film business is a tool. Your podcast on spiritual topics is a tool. You use all of these tools as skillfully as you can. If you're an entrepreneur, you build up your business, hire the right people, cater to your customers. You do all of that. But as you're doing all of that, what you're really doing is you're working on yourself. You try to be the best father you can. But as you're trying to be the best father you can, what you're really doing is you're working on yourself. The only thing you ever do in life is you work on yourself.
I'm going to have to agree with you on everything you just said, because just on the father aspect alone, when you're trying to be a better father, you're trying to improve yourself for others.
And that's the only thing you do, my friend. You work on yourself. When you recognize that, you'll find that every act becomes meaningful. You don't have to find purpose. Purpose finds you.
And when you
gradually, all of the things that are not right for you, Alex, will drop away.
And that's kind of being in the flow of the universe, being the flow of what you're supposed to do. So if you can find passion in your job at Starbucks if that's not what you want to be doing, and find the job that find the joy and the passion in that. Eventually, that if that's not the place for you, the opportunities that are going to be focusing
The
you
right
towards,
place will come along.
and it won't happen in your timeline. That I can promise you, it will not happen in your timeline.
Exactly correct.
You know,
See, we all have heard the classic immigrant story. Guys come to a country, he doesn't speak the language. The only job he can find is a dishwasher.
right?
And 20 years fast forward, and he owns a chain of restaurants and is a multi-millionaire.
Mm-hmm.
He was never work washing dishes. He was building a better future for his kids.
Mm-hmm. But he found the joy, the bliss in doing what he did.
You do what you do. Don't give thought to the consequences. Be where you are. There's a beautiful Zen saying that really encapsulates that. The purpose of washing dishes is not to get them clean. The purpose of washing dishes is to wash the dishes. And as you do that, you have a stack of clean dishes in the drainer.
It's so funny. You were saying that your purpose finds you. If you would have told me at 20 that I was going to be a podcaster doing that full time and speaking to not only people like yourself, but the young 20-year-old version of me, wanted to talk to Oscar-winning filmmakers and Oscar-winning screenwriters and very high-profile people, but I could never get in the doors. The doors were always shut to me. I was always outside the party, never in. And now those people reach out to me to talk to me. And you're just going, how funny the world works. And now that this show has kind of fallen into this company that I'm building has fallen into my lap, and the doors are opening. It's just so magic. Like I found my purpose, because I'm happy, and I've been happy for the last 6.5 years podcasting. I mean, even my wife saw me when I was an editor and doing visual effects and things like that for the movies. She's like, "You're always so angry." I'm like, "Yeah, because I was washing dishes and I did not understand that Zen saying at the time. I was just angry because imagine if you're washing dishes, but what you want to be is the owner of the company. And if you focus on wanting to be the owner of the company, you can never be happy just washing dishes. I lived 25 years of my life that way. And then when I finally found podcasting and online businesses and doing what I love doing, I became so much more content, so much more happy, because I started to wash the dishes or cut wood and carry water, as I like to say. I love that saying, by the way. It's a beautiful saying. I'm going to use that one as well.
Sure. Anytime.
Now, we talked about the flow of the universe. How do you suggest that we fall into that flow, to accept the flow, because we want to control so much? Any advice, any tips on how to just kind of let go and let God, if you will?
Examine your need for control. We're always trying to make things happen the way we want to. We're with a group of friends and we try to control the flow of conversation. Your wife makes a suggestion, let's go see movie A. You say, no, let's see B. I always wanted to see B. It's very subtle, but it's always there. You're always trying to shape the universe to meet your desire. First thing is, spend a couple of months examining how this shows up in every aspect of your life, and gradually start releasing your ever so strong preferences. Go to a restaurant, you know what you want to order. Just ask the waiter, hey, what do you recommend? And whatever she recommends, take it and, enjoy it. As you start letting go of your preferences, you will find that it becomes easier and easier. And you say, oh, but these are big decisions. Should I go to this bank or that bank? Should I borrow $1 million or $10 million? Should I go for this project or that project? And you think, these are big. I can't just let the universe decide. Actually, you can. And the more you release your need to make things happen the more you may find that whatever happens is the perfect thing and is orchestrated so finely that it's a miracle. Let me read something to you. Hold on.
Please. Yeah, absolutely.
Now, Alex, I must tell you that what I'm going to read to you is really very profound, okay?
I expect nothing less, sir.
Okay. Day by day, the manna falls. Day by day, the wisdom, guidance, and direction necessary for that day are given to us. God does not often advise us a week in advance. We receive the direction as we need it. We have acquired the habit of impatience, and the result is that instead of waiting for God's decision to be made manifest, we let fear creep in. And then, afraid of the possibly unfortunate effects of indecision, rush in and act on the basis of our own best human judgment.
Pretty profound, sir.
And that, sir, is profound. But if you think about it, you also know that what you need is endless patience.
Well, that is something I've had to learn with many baseball bats along the journey. Patience is that's why. Thank you for sharing that, by the way. And that's why I've, even in my own journey, have really let go of so much. Where I wanted to control this or I wanted to control that deal, or like we just moved to Austin a little while ago and we were looking for homes, and I just kept saying to my wife, our home is waiting for us. And she would get so upset. I'm like, don't worry, our home is waiting for us. The one that has everything that we want is waiting for us. And when we found it, I said, okay, this is the home. And she's like, well, what if it isn't? I'm like, then it isn't. Then this wasn't the one. And it would drive her mad. It really would. But at a certain point, I was like, I can only control the way I approach things in life. I can't control things that are out of my control. And we exert so much energy of our lives trying to control things that we have absolutely no control of. And I'm like, I just can control how I react to the things that happen in my life. I can't control if I'm going to get outbid by somebody on this house, if someone's going to take that job, if the guest that I'm trying to reach out gets.
Let me stop you there, Alex. Even there, you're wrong, because you don't even have control over that.
Okay.
Think you have control, but you don't.
Okay, tell me.
And I remember I was teaching at a London school. One of the students was pushing back. What do you mean, Professor Rao, I don't have control? You know, I want to scratch my nose. See, I just did that. I want to do it again. I did that. I want to do it again. I did that. I have complete control over whether I want to scratch my nose or not.
Fair enough.
And then somebody else in class said, yes, you have complete control until you don't. And I said, Professor Rao, it's so funny hearing you use that example, because 6 months ago I was in a freak accident and broke both my arms. And both my arms were in a cast, and I wanted to scratch my nose and I couldn't.
Well, so I'm going to push back for a second, and I agree with you 100%. But what I'm saying is not that I have control of physical things, but I do have control on how I react to things.
No, you don't.
So when something happens to me, I can't say that I can't.
You have control, but you don't. Let me give you an example.
Please.
Let's say you're a heavy smoker.
Sure.
And you say, okay, you know, smoking is bad for me. I want to give up smoking.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what happens is perhaps you can give up the physical act of smoking, but you have no control over the desire for smoking. Every time somebody lights up in your presence, you say, gee, I wish I could have a smoke.
Okay.
Okay. You cannot give up desire. Desire has to give you up.
So with the example,
so a lot of the times when you say, I have control, I can do this, etc., you really can't.
So using the house analogy I was using earlier, where I just let go of the option of like, if it's going to happen, it'll happen. That is something that is within my control to say. No, it isn't.
So that is something that can't, because what happens is maybe you're in the fortunate position where you genuinely can let go.
Okay.
But a lot of people feel that this is a good thing to have, but they can't.
Mm-hmm.
This is one of the core teachings in my program.
Mm-hmm.
You try your level best, but you know you don't have control and you accept whatever comes. A lot of people cannot accept whatever comes. They resent it. They resist. Oh my God, that's not what I wanted to happen. I
Right.
thought that if I practiced, I would make the team, but I did not make the team. And
Correct.
they resent it. And there's all kinds of psychological turmoil inside. If you were genuinely able to say, I accept it and let it go,
Mm-hmm.
then you're truly fortunate and be immensely grateful. You got it. Many, many, many will not be able to do it.
That's where I think we can agree, because I understand your point. I think because we're both kind of saying the same thing, but from a different perspective. But I do agree with what you're saying 100%. You truly have to let go. And even the desire of wanting it is an act of not completely letting go. Whereas
Exactly. That's the point I was trying to
say. Exactly. Because if you could say outwardly, like, hey, I don't care if I get the house, but inwardly, like, man, I really wanted that house. Exactly. But if you could truly elevate yourself to the place where you're like, I truly can let go of what happens. And it's not an easy task. And I do it. I'm not 100% at it, but I'm getting better at letting go of.
You'll find some areas you can and some areas you can't. And the areas you can't are the areas you need to work on.
Right. Exactly. It was like, it's fascinating. The other day I got an email from somebody that I wanted to have on one of my shows, and for whatever reason they couldn't make it, and it hit all sorts of nerves inside of me, because they represent a very big organization, and it was like all of a sudden all these emotions started coming up in me, like, oh, well, I just want to get accepted by the establishment. I want to get accepted by something that's mainstream and inside of that industry. And then I recognized that I became aware of the feelings of like, oh, this is all ego and all the old baggage that you've been carrying around with you for the last 30 years. Okay, you've got to let it go. And I did. And a couple hours later, and now it doesn't bother me at all. I'm like, hey, it doesn't happen. It wasn't supposed to happen. But for those 2 or 3 hours before I went to bed, I was just like, man, it's bothering me. So it's not easy, but you can feel it and then release it. But that is even a lot, because most people hold on to things for decades.
Yep. For the lifetime.
For lifetimes sometimes.
Absolutely. Yes.
I want to ask you, because you speak about changing you shift your perspective on the world to make you happier. How does someone shift their perspective on the world?
Einstein said the most important question you will ever ask yourself is the universe friendly?
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Let me repeat that. Einstein said the most important question you'll ever ask yourself is the universe friendly?
Mm-hmm.
Now, we revere Einstein as a great scientist. He discovered or formulated the theory of relativity, discovered the photoelectric effect, for which he got the Nobel Prize. So yes, he was a great scientist. But he was also a great philosopher, and he had a very intricate understanding of the way the universe worked. And what he said is the most important question you will ever ask yourself is the universe friendly? The vast overwhelming majority of us believe that the universe is neither friendly nor unfriendly. It doesn't know I exist and couldn't care less. It is indifferent. Here I am going around doing my thing. There's the universe going around doing its thing. Sometimes it seems to be working for me. Sometimes it seems to be working against me. But essentially, it's random. What if the universe was aware of your existence? And not only what if the universe was aware of the existence, what if the universe was friendly? The universe was well disposed towards you. Well, if the universe was friendly, friends don't shaft friends, do they? Of course not. So if the universe was friendly, why does it give me things I don't want? I want to travel on vacation, and the universe gives me pandemics and lockdowns. Why does the universe give me stuff I don't want? Well, what if the universe gave you stuff that you don't want, but that was exactly what you needed for your learning and growth? It's like you're a small child and you want a tub of ice cream and your parents give you fruits and vegetables. And you don't want fruits and vegetables. You want a tub of ice cream, but your parents give you fruits and vegetables. And it isn't until much later when you have a greater level of wisdom and maturity that you can say, thank God my parents gave me fruits and vegetables. What if the universe was like that? It doesn't give you what you want, but it gives you exactly what you need for your learning and growth.
Now,
regardless of whether or not the universe is friendly, if you believe the universe was friendly, your experience of life would be immeasurably enhanced. And what if the universe actually was friendly? Then, my friend, every day would be a blast.
that's the perspective.
That's why Einstein said the most important question you can ask yourself is the universe friendly? And there is every possibility of your discovering, first deciding, and then discovering that the universe is friendly. And that's what my course and programs are all about.
So let me ask you this, because I saw this in another interview. You're a very big tennis fan, and you got your tickets to Wimbledon the first time you were going to go. And you, of course, the pandemic happened. And not only did you think, oh, this could never happen, but that they shut down Wimbledon, which was unheard of. What was that teaching you?
Oh, it didn't teach me anything because I kind of had already accepted that in advance. I knew stuff like that happens that I didn't have control. But it simply gave me a wonderful example to use because everybody can relate to that right off. When I say you don't have control, and say again, you can imagine you can't go to Wimbledon because somebody fell ill or something like that.
Right.
You can't go to Wimbledon because the tournament was canceled and no planes flying between New York and London. It's that big.
That doesn't happen. That's never happened. I've always been able to go to the supermarket and get toilet paper. What do you mean I can't get toilet paper?
Exactly.
And
that's why the pandemic has really done us a great service, because it's really shown us at a visceral level how little control we have.
And I wanted to ask you this question. There's obviously a shift going on in the world. There is something that the entire world is feeling at the exact same time. And I'd love to hear your perspective on what you think is happening on the consciousness of the species, of humanity, of the world. What do you think is happening? Because there's absolutely something going on. Shift is happening. There's I call it the etch-a-sketching of the world, because they're it's shaking it up a little bit and completely changing things that were rock solid.
That's a very good one. People ask me all the time, do I feel that people are coming more conscious, that there is a general drift in that direction? And the short answer is I really don't know. Obviously, the kinds of people who are attracted to me and the work I do are inclined in that direction, and that's why they seek me out. Mm-hmm. So I see more and more evidence of such people happening. But whether that means there are more such people, or whether that means the few such people there are discovering me, I don't have a clue. But I do believe that in general, we are on a path towards higher levels of consciousness. And if you look at it, you'll see signs of it all around. We're all upset today because a major war has just launched in Europe, the first war in 70 plus years. And, there are many parts of the world which are bad. But if you look at it from a broader scale and you look at the entire history of the world as we know it, there has never been a time when a greater percent of the population was living in relative peace and plenty as right now. There have always been battles. There have been severe battles where people lost their life. 150 years ago, it was perfectly acceptable for one human being to own another human being. And slavery still exists, but at least there's a widespread realization that this is wrong and should not be. So we are moving to higher levels of consciousness, nowhere near as fast as many of us would like, but it's unquestionable that it is. So overall, I would say, where am I? In the drama that I have created, I am guardedly optimistic. And in the meantime, my goal is to recognize it's all a drama. So who's the slave and who's the owner? It's all a story we're telling ourselves anyway.
Now I'm going to ask you two questions I ask all of my guests. What is your mission in this life?
My mission in this life, Alex, is to awaken. And through the things that I have been privileged to understand, because one thing that I have come to realize, false modesty aside, is that I'm a damn good translator. I can take these concepts and frame them in language that is acceptable and understandable to intelligent people whose heart is in the right place, but who haven't had the background in training.
And why are we all here?
We are not here. That is a dream.
So why are we dancing in this dream of in these meat suits?
That is the soap opera that you have created. And in that soap opera that you have created, there is this guy, Srikumar Rao, who has interesting things to say to your audience.
Right.
But you created all of that, my friend. You created Srikumar Rao, you created the audience, you created the podcast, and your job is to wake out of it. And my job is to help you wake out of it as part of my own journey towards waking out of it.
So at the end of the day, we're all of our journeys is to awaken.
Let me read one more thing to you, my friend, if I may.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
This again, Alex, is super profound.
Okay.
And it talks about a seeker who's been to a monastery and spent a long time there. And he became very friendly with one of the young acolytes in the monastery. And when they were leaving, when it was time for him to leave, it was very sad. And it was particularly sad because they both knew that he would go back to his homeland, and the probability of their meeting again was very remote.
Okay.
So this is the acolyte advising the author. Do not grieve, elder brother. We shall miss each other, but let it not be too much. As the preceptor said yesterday, you and I and all beings are animated by the one spirit. No parting and no meeting ever really take place. When we rejoice at a meeting or grieve at a parting, we are allowing false understanding to take the place of truth. Wherever you go, in this life and in lives to come, I shall be with you. The light which shines deep, deep within your heart is my light, the light of all. And when at last we have gained the object of our great search, even apparent differences and divisions will melt away. You and I will know ourselves for the one that we have never ceased to be.
That's amazing. Beautifully profound quote. Dr. Rao, where can people find out more about you and the work that you're doing?
Best way is for them to go to my website, www.therawinstitute.com, and browse. They can read my blogs. If they like what they see, there's a button called Join Now. And if they click that, they can register and they'll get information about my programs, and they'll get my blog.
Dr. Rao, it has been a profound conversation, as I knew it would. It has been a pleasure talking to you, and I do truly appreciate your work in this delusion that we've all created, but the work that you've done to help awaken not only entrepreneurs and business leaders, but hopefully the world as well. So I appreciate you, my friend. Thank you so much.
My pleasure entirely, Alex.
Thanks for watching. Click on one of the videos below to continue your journey, and don't forget to subscribe.